The Niqabi Diary Season 1 illustrated book is now available in paperback. Own your copy now by clicking the link in the description box. Assalamu alaikum. You're listening to the Niqabi Diary series by The Pen, the sound of sisters raising their voices with the written word. I'm your host Samar, and thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're listening to By the Pen, the sound of sisters raising their voices with the written word. I'm your host Samar, and here today with us we have Sister Shireen Patel. Sister, could you introduce yourself for us and tell us about the book that you've been writing, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you firstly for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm honored that you would discuss my book. So I wrote Muslim Marriage 101, a proactive guide to creating a peaceful and loving marriage. Well, let me begin with my name, Shireen Patel, and I'm an author and a Muslim marriage coach.
MashaAllah, Allah Mubarak. So I'm assuming that your coaching is what kind of made you want to write about Muslim marriage.
No, actually, it went the other way. So I wrote the book first, and now I'm kind of, looking. I don't do a lot of coaching. I'm just dabbling into it right now. But yeah, the book I wrote first, and it covers a wide range of topics. So it allows me to kind of deal with many different areas in marriage, and also my personal experience has allowed for that. So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So what could you share with us what actually inspired you to write about this topic in particular?
So for me, really, marriage has been probably a lifelong obsession, I guess you could say. Since I was a teen, I was always really fascinated about I think I just watched people a lot, maybe. And once I started getting more into deen, I started reading books and things like that. And I think I just fell in love with the marriage of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu and Khadija radiallahu anha, and how, the perfection of it. Mm-hmm. So since then, I consumed a lot of marriage content. And it was just always something that what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was a family and marriage counselor according to Sharia. That was my dream, I suppose.
Wow, mashallah. So was that from childhood?
Yeah, probably from my teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Mashallah, that's really interesting. So who would you say primarily the book is aimed for? Is it towards a particular gender? So obviously it's about Muslim marriage, but would you say it's more focused towards sisters, or is it generally for sisters and brothers?
So the thought when writing the book was for both. It was for men and women.
Right.
There are particular sections in there that is speaking just to men, and some that is just speaking just to women. My purpose in that is kind of like, as it says, it's like a guide. So you know how you get these parenting guides and your kid is choking and you go in and you figure out what to do, or things like that. So it's troubleshooting your marriage, but it can be from anywhere that you are in your marriage, whether it's whether it's conflict and you're stuck, or you're just starting out and you're like, how do I maneuver through it? And a big part of the audience that I was talking to in the book are Muslims in the West, because I found that a lot of literature, like traditional books, Islamic books, even on marriage, it talks about, it gives you tips, it gives you advice, but I feel like understanding where we're coming from in our society and the problems that we're facing, it doesn't address. So you don't know how to apply Islamic concepts to the problems that we're having nowadays.
Could you give us some examples?
Essentially talks about. So one section in the book is talking about finances.
Right.
And, if we break that down simply, we could say, well, men, are the caretakers and they provide. But in this society, especially Western society, there are a lot of women that work. And it's shared income, and now you're wondering, well, who has the final say, and who's who's supposed to do this and who's supposed to do it. There's a lot of conflicts that are unnecessary in some ways, but also they veer off from the foundation, the Islamic rights and the responsibilities. So when I talk about finances, it's not so cut and dry, yet ultimately we go back to rights. And then from rights, you can, between the couple, they can find a common ground there. And then resolve the marriage, or rather whatever conflicts are there. So for example, it's not a man's right to use a woman's money. Her money is her money, Islamically. She does not have to share that money for the entire household.
Yeah.
So if she chooses to, she, by her choice, is giving up a right. So she makes that decision. Just because she gives up a right, it doesn't nullify his right to have, this, to be the emir of the household,
Yes.
to take on that leadership role. Whereas a lot of times in society, it's like, well, I'm paying half, it should be 50-50. I should, and that's where conflict happens, because you can't have two people running the show.
Of course, definitely. So on the flip side of that then, so what would you advise for a husband who wanted his wife to give up her rights and kind of pushed her into doing that because he felt that he needed that extra help from her, and then and the same time in that situation, maybe he as the husband is not fulfilling other roles that he is supposed to be doing?
Well, see, that's typically kind of what happens, because of course for a man, that's generally easier to be like, all right, you make pretty good money and this is gonna, take off the weight on my back. And she's trying to be helpful or whatever it is she's trying to do. And sometimes you have to put your foot down and force a situation where, so even if a woman is making enough money or has the money, if it's being abused, or if the situation is where a man is just not stepping up because it's too easy for him, she has to pull away.
Yeah.
And be like, you know what, I love you and I care for you, but this is where our Islamic rights are, and kind of reestablish it again.
So when you say pull away, like in that situation, what do you advise women to do basically? What's your practical advice for Muslims in the West in that kind of situation?
If it's a situation where he's pressuring her to financially hold the household and there's not a valid reason, really, it's just easy for him, I would tell her that not to do that, if not to give her wealth for the family needs at that moment, not out of spite,
yes,
but to reset the balance in the marriage, so that there's not this easy out, and be like, hey, you know what, things are not going well, there's too much tension, and this is your right, or rather this is my right and your responsibility, so let's start from there. I'm not going to financially keep holding the household, that's your job and you need to figure that out.
I think this is a really interesting topic, and you've kind of brought so many thoughts to my mind as well. Just the fact that you gave this as an example as well, because it is one of the most, probably, as you said, like situations that bring so much conflict in marriages in the West, especially. And I think Western marriage, particularly more than in like Muslim countries, because of the laws that that are around. Basically, when a man and a woman get married legally in that country, if a divorce does take place, then whoever instigates the divorce, they could be, well, either partner could be at risk of losing part of their wealth or quite a lot of their wealth to the other spouse or the ex-spouse.
Right.
So, and obviously, as for a Muslim woman, that is quite detrimental, and something that I know sisters personally who have been in this kind of situation, where they've been the ones earning more money, and then God forbid the divorce has taken place, and they're worried that the husband's just going to come after them to take their money from them, because maybe they own a property, or they're just earning that much more, so they are at risk there. So do you have any kind of advice as to how sisters could protect themselves in that situation? Obviously, I know this is kind of stepping outside of the realms of marriage, but obviously this is kind of past that stage, which your book obviously covers. But you know, in that situation, could you like give any, is there any practical advice you have for those kind of sisters, like who are already on the, you know, in the stages of divorce? I'm sorry I've put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. Bismillah. So for me personally, I think, and I mentioned it in the book, and I say, you know, when conflict strikes like this, when it's something very heavy and you just cannot see eye to eye, pretty much no compromise, it's just stuck, or things are not changing, then you revert back to Islamic rights. And I keep saying Islamic rights, but I'm going back to the very traditional roles that we are presented and is our right Islamically, which is that the man provides and the woman doesn't have to, and she shouldn't be responsible for it. And if she has anything, he has no part of that. It's not his right to have that. If she willingly gives it up, she can. If they're in a situation like that, though, I would suggest she doesn't. And you know, the thing is which is really hard for a lot of people, especially in the West, to wrap their head around. It's not a matter of need, because a woman would say, well, I don't need his money, I can do it myself, I don't need it. And it's not a matter of needing it or not needing it. It's that when you take on that, when you allow him to take on that role, or rather not enable him, not even allow him, you don't enable him to forego his responsibilities, he will by nature, and the nature of men is rise, because that's the need that they have. Men are, they like to be heroes. They are maintainers and protectors, and that's when they feel their best, when they start doing that. Of course, it requires work. I mean, it's easy to sit back and be like, hey, she's a lawyer, she studied all these years, she should do it, right? Like, I mean, some men can do that, and she'll be like, well, I studied, and you know, maybe I should, and maybe she wants to, but the bottom line is it's not her responsibility.
Of course.
And if you, and a lot of times, again, the woman saying, well, I don't need your money, I don't need your help, she's resentful, because the nature of women is that we want to be taken care of, whether we can handle it or not.
Definitely.
That's our nature. So when we push away these rights, like it's, you know, I don't, it doesn't matter, then you start having problems, because Allah has ensured that our nature is fulfilled, our core self that we neglect or we can't even see is fulfilled through those rights. So I would advise that people just go all the way back to basics.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I think what's happened is that there's just been a constant push of the, as they call it, the boundaries, and in pushing the boundaries, they've just, you know, people have gone over the limits, and it's affecting us in a negative way. It's not actually benefiting us at all. So, you know, then you go past this boundaries, and then, you know, you find that life is completely out of balance. I mean, life will have different situations that come, and you have to do, maybe a woman would have to step up at times and be the one to support the family. For example, the husband becomes sick or something like that, there's extenuating circumstances, but it shouldn't be the main, like, it shouldn't be the you know, it shouldn't be the default, you know, which is happening a lot of these days, subhanAllah, just because of, oh, well, whoever makes the most money. And that brings a lot of pressure, I think, to many marriages, especially for Muslims as well, because obviously we have the Quran and Sunnah as our example. So like you're saying, you know, if that's our example, and we've got this, you know, completely opposite kind of way of living that's being kind of imposed because of being raised in the West, then there's that conflict, obviously, internally within the individuals as well, individual Muslims.
Right.
Mashallah. So this book of yours sounds like it's, mashallah, a big work and very important. So I wanted to ask you as well, sister, you mentioned before that, you know, as you was growing up, obviously you was looking into the Quran and the Sunnah, different examples of marriage, and the Prophet ﷺ, and with the marriage of Khadija radiallahu anha. So are there any other, like, maybe examples that you had in your own personal life that you felt were very beneficial and you know, inspired you as well, and helped you to kind of build this, you know, build this stage that you came to writing this book?
I would say probably the biggest would be my own personal life. I have been divorced twice.
Okay.
And alhamdulillah, and I'm married again. And being a person that's been very pro marriage and consumed a lot of Islamic content, even secular content, you would wonder, like, didn't this this lady figure it out, what's going on? Why are you divorced twice? And I really truly consider it a blessing, because it was my desire as a teen to be this counselor, to be this person. And I really took it to heart, this concept of Islamic marriages and how things should function in a household. But the reality is, you don't know unless you actually go through it. You don't know how to maneuver through it until you've actually felt that pain, especially marriage. Marriage will trigger you in emotional ways unlike anything else. And if a person hasn't felt it, it's really hard to advise, because it's deep. It's so deep. And alhamdulillah, through those tests, it's forced me, one, to continue learning. I just keep consuming any type of content, and however it is, whether even for business, it's like psychology. But the thing about me is, I like application. I dislike this like fluffy concepts. And of course, as a believer, we have to weed out the things that are contrary to our beliefs. So things like that also, it's like this sorting out process that's been happening in my head for maybe 20 years now. So sitting down and writing this book took me from start to finish, with like editing and rewriting it all over again, because Microsoft Word is not that dependable. It took a year, but just like getting the content down was probably like 3 months. And
that's pretty quick for writing a book. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, Allah had opened a way for me. And like I said, my husband's like, that's fast. I said, it's been in my head for a long time.
Alhamdulillah. Sometimes it's like there's so much of a build-up, isn't it? So then when you finally get to that stage where you feel that you can just sit down and just do it, it just comes out, easily and naturally, SubhanAllah.
Yeah, actually, it started by being a challenge to my children. When COVID hit, I'm like, all right, we're stuck in the house. I don't want these kids to be useless. So I challenged all of them to do something based on what they like one to learn a language, another one to write a book. And for me, I was like, okay, and I'll write a book. That's my challenge. So far, the boys didn't get anywhere. the younger one, the daughter, she's almost written her first novel, her fiction novel.
So sweet. How old is she?
She's 11, but she writes fantastic. Like, it's just amazing how she writes, mashallah.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. So what would you say was your biggest challenge, seeing as you said that obviously you set yourself a challenge during COVID to write your book? What was your biggest challenge in actually writing it?
I think a lot of self-doubt, even releasing it. I mean, it's been out for a little while, but I'm just like very slowly putting it out there, because I guess in my own way, there's this like negative self-talk of, who are you to write a book? You've been divorced twice. What do you know about marriage? Like all these things. Like,
I know that I have that all the time. SubhanAllah. I've been writing a book as well, and literally, like, I've written the whole book.
Mashallah.
And I've just like literally come to the end of it, and this is like, that is literally on play in my head every time I think about the book now. So it's like I don't even want to read it, and I don't want anybody to read it.
Yeah, I did the same thing. And even now, even after I printed it, I self-published it through Amazon, because I didn't want anybody to change it. As silly as that sounds, it's very personal, and it was advice that came from my life experience, or what I believe as truth. And I prayed so deeply, and I continue to, that these words are pleasing to Allah. That even the fact that Microsoft Word messed up like that and didn't save, I do not know why. I took it as a blessing. I'm like, you know what? There's something I'm missing. There's something I put in there. There's something that needs to be changed. I went chapter by chapter, the 28 chapters, and I just worked through each one all over again with the draft content. So I had an idea of what I'm going to say, but pretty much went through it all over again. And I took it on. Published it on Amazon, then I took it off, and then it's emotional roller coaster.
Alhamdulillah. No, alhamdulillah, this is it's good. Like at least you took that stage, you know, you have made the intention, and alhamdulillah, you've done it. So I wanted to ask you, you know, in relation to the book as well, and obviously being a sister who's divorced, I'm also a divorcee myself. But one of the things that I personally experienced, I think, going through a divorce, or I will say, I could say a bad marriage, what I would call a bad marriage, anyways. After I did get divorced, you know, one of the things that my friends told me, which I really actually liked, and it made me reflect a lot, of what she said, that when a divorce takes place, you know, both people are at fault. It could be that, you know, even one person is more to blame than the other, and it could be much more to blame. For example, like if there's abuse in a marriage or something like that, definitely there's one person that could be much more to blame than the other, but both people are still to blame. They have, because everybody has faults. So it made me like really look at myself and think about how I could develop as a person, so that inshallah, when I was, if I was to be able to get married again, how could I improve as a wife, for example? So would you say that, do you feel, obviously through your personal experiences, you did mention that, you know, that's kind of helped you to write this book, but do you feel that it's helped your growth as an individual, and being able to have the ability to reflect on yourself and bring yourself to account, you know, in certain situations, and help you to be a better wife, obviously now in the marriage that you have now, and be even better mother for your children?
For sure, absolutely. I have a chapter in the book called "We Aren't," or rather, section "We Aren't as Good as We Think." And you know, our core nature is to have the best opinion of ourselves in many ways. I mean, we will silently put ourselves down and stuff, but when blame is out there or fault, normally we're the good guy and the other person's the bad guy. That's just human nature. So for me, I've always thought that I've been in the whole process, first divorce, second divorce, even my current marriage, that I do self-reflect and I do try and fix my problem. And but you know, the crazy thing that I realized, especially for me, a person that was trying to analyze everything and break it down and be rational and a matter of factly, um, is that I failed to feel. As silly as that sounds, and that deals with more the feminine energy and things of that nature, and I became very practical. And sometimes when you become too practical, you have walls that you don't even realize you have. You think you're being rational and level-headed, and you know, let me know what's wrong with me, kind of thing, or I can fix this, or I'll, as opposed to being able to be weak, being able to be vulnerable, and understanding truly what your needs are, and being able to express that. All that stuff is hidden. There are layers and layers of it. So that's pretty much something that um, I've realized actually in my current marriage, is that okay, I know a lot of this stuff. I know it from a very rational point of view. I know it, but there's something I'm missing. And pretty much that's what I was missing, is that I didn't allow myself to truly feel everything.
SubhanAllah. I think I could definitely relate to that, because I think when you've gone through that kind of period of marriage and then divorce, you're trying to hold yourself together as well. So, and especially if you have children, you're trying to just, you know, keep going and hold yourself together. And you know, I also wanted to ask you as well, even in the Muslim community, divorce is still quite a stigma. It's something that's still frowned upon, even though like it's very, you know, it's prevalent now in our community. Not something strange. Everybody's getting divorced these days, all the billah, but that's what's happening. It's very common. But still, like, you know, it's still something that is definitely frowned upon, and especially for single women who've been divorced, it's hard to get remarried sometimes, or if you've got children, it can be very hard to get remarried, or you're discouraged to do so. So yeah, definitely, I think that's one of the things that happens. You try to hold yourself together, and you know, you just become, I don't want to say robotic, but you know, as you said, you're trying to be a rational person, and just you just take every day and just keep going. And
well, they say that the expression that you hear a lot, oh, I've been told you're so strong, or and you're being strong. And honestly, it used to really irk me. I used to hate it when people said that. I got what they meant, but I didn't want to be strong, but I didn't know how to just let myself go. If I did, I do have my children. I have 3 children that are mine. And that's exactly as you said, you need to hold it together. And I would say I can't afford to do that. It takes too much time.
Yes, yes, it's
It's
true.
inconvenient.
That's how it. But that's how you think, though, isn't it? SubhanAllah. Not only that, but it's like if you do open up yourself to being vulnerable, who could you be vulnerable to? Because you're worried that somebody could take advantage of you. You kind of leave yourself open, and then somebody will take advantage of you, or it can go the wrong way. Something bad could happen. It could be
Yeah.
open to manipulation as well. That's another fear that could can be
Yeah.
in your mind.
Well,
SubhanAllah.
here's the crazy part about that. And that's also kind of what you tell yourself, but you have to be vulnerable to yourself.
Mm.
And this stuff used to kind of also be a little silly to me, because I didn't quite get it. I'm like, this is just nonsense, like what are you talking about? But it's allowing, giving yourself permission to even acknowledge those emotions, even whether you write it down in a diary or whatever it is, even from an Islamic point of view, because you don't want to be a person that's ungrateful. You don't want to be a person that, um, you know, uh, is bad in any way, or is speaking bad about other people or things like that. So you try to hold it together, but you don't allow yourself to acknowledge the full range of emotions. And so to yourself, you have to allow yourself to feel that, even if it's not being said to anybody else, but internally you have to.
Definitely. It's like they say, like when people are having like any kind of addiction problem, they say the first step is recognizing that you have a problem. So is it similar to that?
you know I don't think so, because that is very overt. It's if you have an anger issue, if you have anxiety, that you can easily recognize, or you can recognize and just dealing with, okay, I have anxiety, let me deal with it. That is like that. But when it comes to emotions,
Hmm.
there are other things involved. And there's a book called Inner Bond. I forgot who it's written by, but it's basically talking about the inner child, and this idea of, basically, it's our subconscious. And again, this coming from an Islamic point of view, I don't necessarily take everything from there, where you talk to this inner
Hmm.
child, which could be the jinn that is with us all the time. I'm not convinced that's necessary, but the idea is that you acknowledge the subconscious things inside of you,
Hmm.
and that takes an extra layer of reflection, and pretty much just being still. You literally have to still yourself, and this is the beauty of dhikr. When you calm yourself, you still yourself, and then you just feel whatever you're feeling. Pen and paper is a beautiful way of doing it, because you start writing and you're not thinking, it's on a subconscious level, and things come out, and you allow yourself to just, oh, okay, I'm that mad. I didn't realize I was that mad,
Oh,
or that really hurt me, and I didn't acknowledge that hurt. I would be like, no, I'm fine. I can do that. I can do that. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Not everything is fine, but we tell ourselves that.
yes, subhanallah. So, sister, who would you say were your biggest supporters while writing? Because it sounds like you did a lot by yourself, and you was obviously very self-driven.
Yeah.
So who would you say your biggest supporters were on a practical level, if anything, during this time?
Uh, I would say my who's a twin sister. So alhamdulillah, I'm blessed with that very close connection.
Allah
Um,
Mabarak, mashallah.
and my children on this, they're so, subhanallah, children are such a blessing in their own ways. So there, it's that belief in me, like, mommy, you got this, you can do it, or
Allah.
how's it going, kind of thing. And then my husband, even though he did review the first copy for content, especially Islamic content, because that's his area, but he would always make remarks like, you should go into psychology, you should have a PhD by now, or like things like that, or that this like belief that you should do it. even though he's not sure how or what's happening, but he kind of just put that out there. So when that self-doubt came, I relied on that to push me, I guess.
Alhamdulillah. So what, as a new author, what advice would you give to other sisters who were thinking about writing a book?
To pretty much just start writing. Don't worry about right, wrong. Don't worry about who's reading it. Don't worry about marketing. Nothing. Just write, and make sure you do it daily, or rather, schedule it. Force yourself that, okay, today I'm gonna write, and do it. Not like, I don't feel like writing today. I don't, because you see, the thing is like, you have the thought, and actually, you know what? It probably shouldn't be daily, because if you're too much into it, then you sometimes can't get your words out. And oftentimes when we're not focusing on our writing, our brain is actually getting all those thoughts together, so we're better prepared to put it on paper or type it up. But really, the idea though is not to give up. It's just to keep at it, and to make sure you do. If you want to do it, then just start. Bismillah, just start.
Alhamdulillah. So I suppose for people who are, from what you said just now, and you mentioned about writing every day, and then you said, well, maybe you shouldn't write every day. So, but I think it's important to have that time scheduled as well. If you can schedule a period of time where even if you're not writing your book, you can kind of just be sitting and having time to think, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of us, we don't take time to do sometimes. Sometimes you just need time to just sit down and just think, not do anything else.
Yeah. They call it the unfocused mind.
Yeah, basically. So, sister, remind us again for the listeners, what's the name of your book?
So the book is called Muslim Marriage 101, and it's available on Amazon, across all their platforms. It's available, UK, Canada, everywhere, Australia, even China, I think. So yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Well, inshallah, hopefully the listeners will take a look at your book. I'm definitely going to add that to my collection as well, inshallah. I'm going to have a look at it now, get it in my basket before I forget, inshallah, because I'm trying to actually build a little library of Muslim authors. So I just try to get as many books as possible, bit by bit. And then I've got a lot of reading to do, basically.
Well, good, it can unwind, take time to yourself.
Inshallah. Okay, sister, mashallah, that was a really beautiful interview. Lovely talking to you, and I'm sure the listeners will have, inshallah, benefited. And I encourage everybody, go and buy the sister's book, because we need sisters who are writing books like this and sharing their experiences, especially. I forgot to ask you, what's the genre of your book? Is it more of it's a self-help kind of style book, right?
Yeah, it's self-help.
Okay.
Yeah, with a heavy religious base, but self-help, yeah.
But for heavy what, sorry?
Religious connotation, religious tone to it. Everything in there, is geared, as it says, it's a Muslim marriage book, really.
Good. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today. Lovely to hear about your book, and inshallah, we're going to put all the links for the book in the description box so that people can get access to it. Is it available in hard copy as well as ebook, or just?
It's just hard copy right now, but I'm working on trying to get a Kindle version of it. So hopefully we'll get that going.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, sister. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.